Today on the 01581, two really cool human beings and special guests. You're going to want to watch this one. Hi, and welcome to this episode of the 01581. I'm Shelby Marshall, proudly serving as one of your select board members, and I'm the host of the 01581 Let's Talk. Been running this show for 80 episodes. I think today is 81, and today's a really special show because it's actually a transitional show. And what does that mean? Well, I'm actually handing the reins over to two amazing individuals who you may know. And so today is about interviewing them. It's sort of like their interview for the job. They don't know that yet. But no, seriously, I'm really excited to introduce Lisa and Alan Edinberg, and they are going to be the hosts of the 01581. And this opportunity today on the show is for you to get to know them a little bit and for them to introduce themselves to the viewers.
Well, thank you for having us.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I actually asked the crew here for some Kleenex because I might cry, but so, you know, I'm just kidding. No, I'm very excited. So, I've known you guys for a while. Some of our viewers may know you. Let's start with a little personal background. Again, this is an interview, make no mistake, right? So based on the ratings, it will really determine whether or not you can go forward and sit in the seats, right? So we'll start with you, Lisa. So where are you from? How did you find your way to Westborough?
I am originally from Worcester. I grew up in Worcester, and
wow.
Yes, very far.
That far.
Big travel day, you know. But no, I came to Westborough because I actually taught 9 years at Gibbons Middle School.
No kidding.
Yes.
This is like fun facts here.
Yes.
Okay.
And although when I taught here, I did not live here, and yet after getting married and then marrying this man as my first husband.
Yes, first husband.
Still. And we were deciding on 3 towns, and one of them was Westborough, and we decided to live here. And a big part of my background is that after teaching, I went to business school and got my MBA, and so getting involved in Westborough was always part of my deal. I always thought I would run for school committee, including when I arrived. I remember thinking about it then, but instead I got involved with the schools and volunteering for years in math enrichment and school councils and a bunch of other groups, and found my way on the school committee and served for 6 years, including chair for one of those, and during COVID, and really got into the depth of Westborough. And we have a love of the town, and you know, being here today is really about how do we continue to give back, and it's really fun to be here, so thank you for having us and interviewing us for this post.
Right.
Yeah.
Not too many job interviews actually happen on camera, and they get just broadcast, right?
I know.
And Alan, how about you? Where do you hail from?
So I actually grew up in the village of Wilmette, which is a suburb about the same size at the time I lived there as Westborough is now. It was a northern suburb of Chicago. Went to school in Michigan and ended up out here in, after my degree, working for Data General over at 4400 Computer Drive. In fact, until that building eventually comes down, you can drive in the back parking lot and see the window that they wouldn't let my desk be next to because I wasn't high enough in rank.
You had to like sit.
So they actually put a cube wall in front of the window, even though my desk was right there, because those were like the corporate rules back in the day.
Right.
And you know, from that job, moved into consulting and was living in Boston. At the time I met Lisa, we got married and moved back to Westborough in 2002.
This is when our awesome tech crew has little hearts and butterflies floating above you. You just can't see them, like that moment when you met.
Yes, very much so. And actually, I almost totally turned her off on our first date.
We almost didn't make a second date.
We almost didn't make a second one, but you know, things worked out okay, I guess. So
there you go.
There we go.
There you go.
And we moved back into Westborough in 2002 as our family had started and was growing. We came here because of the community. Lisa knew it very well from having taught here. And looking at other communities, we felt this would be a good place to settle, so we did. I got more involved. I got fascinated with town meeting and local governance and citizen legislatures and how that works. And so my first foray into community service directly here in Westborough was actually as a member of the Charter Review Commission. That was then canceled for two reasons. One, we weren't sure what question we were actually trying to answer. And secondly, with Jim Malloy's departure at the time, it was felt it would be hard to attract a town manager if you were actively considering changing the form of government, which means they'd be out of a job, potentially. And so from there, staying involved in local activities, I ran and was elected, spent 2 terms on the select board for 6 years. As part of my tenure there, liaison, as you know, the meetings and town meeting are the visible part. The invisible part of being on the select board is your liaison work and attending other committee meetings and participating in that work and issues behind the scenes. Through my work on the select board, I got actively involved in affordable housing and was instrumental in the creation and the ongoing operation of the Affordable Housing Trust. And I'm still honored to be able to serve as a trustee for that organization and continue that work as well.
That's great. And you have 2 amazing kids?
They're
not kids.
They're not, they're young adults.
Adults, they're adults.
So we have a 22-year-old daughter who has
Flown the coop.
flown the coop.
Literally.
But is also living a life of service. She's a volunteer with AmeriCorps. She is currently tutoring and mentoring middle school students in Sitka, Alaska. Is a little remote, a little far away, but she's loving it and doing great work there.
That's great.
And our son is transferring to UMass in September.
Excellent.
Looking at macroeconomics and philosophy as a dual major.
A talented musician and technologically
Yes.
very skilled. So
savvy.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing a little bit of that history. So you served on, so you bring a really, I think, a really rich perspective, both of you. I can only imagine what dinner conversations were like back, a handful of years ago, right?
They're still that way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and so with that, I mean, you've kind of talked about what brought you to Westborough, but like, what keeps you here? What do you love about Westborough?
I love the fabric, the diversity fabric that it seems to shift over time and really enrich the values that existed long before that diversity came in, because the values were in our family and education and faith. And I mean, when you look at Westborough, it has always been that way. Nothing has changed in that regard. But the look and feel of the town have changed. There is some progression into a new view, and I think it adds to the fabric of our community, and I think it's a perfect tapestry that exists in most communities, and it's really important to embrace those kinds of changes, even though that can be hard.
Yeah.
And so that's what keeps us coming back.
Yeah.
Excellent.
How about you, Alan?
For me, it's the community. It's all that. It's the community as well, and that, yep, there are segments of the population that may not seem as involved in the local community, but the level of involvement in this community and the things that we accomplish, not just in our role on boards and committees, but just as residents and citizens, and the level of involvement in community activities is phenomenal. And that, I think, the changing dynamic of the town adds excitement and new opportunities there. And it's still a great place to live. It's interesting, when I first ran for select board, I talked about the 3 P's and Q of local government, and it was public safety, public education, public works, and quality of life. And Westborough is really unique in that all 4 of those things are done really well here.
They are.
And in a way that respects the residents and the businesses and the guests as well. And it's not to say we don't have serious issues and major challenges and things that happen that impact our lives and our community that are totally outside of our local control. But as a community, I don't see us being afraid to address those and deal with those and have those hard conversations and make challenging decisions. And that level of interest and involvement, and sort of why I'm here, and I think we're here today, is a lot of that comes about being aware, being knowledgeable, of the issues and of the opportunities,
Yeah.
so that those who want to get involved feel comfortable and are able to do so.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, no, I love that. And there are so many ways that we see people getting involved. The obvious is, right, boards and committees. And I say obvious to me because it's like what I see all the time. And then I have to go back, well, probably in my history, probably about 10, 12, 15 years and think, you know, how I really started to get involved was through being a member of the Rotary Club, and that opened my eyes to becoming a library trustee, right? And then I was in the parent group, right, at Armstrong, and then actually just at Armstrong. And people are so involved in clubs, in supporting athletic teams, as coaches, as volunteers, as making sure the kids have refreshments or school. I mean, it just I think there are just these pockets of that, and the intent really sort of this show was to connect people to things that they should be aware of and people that they should know in the community. And so this started long before the 01581. My friend and colleague, Arthur Bergeron, who's an elder law attorney, he started the Frank and Mary show and had me on as his guest just because of the home care experience I had. And then it just blossomed. And then the pivotal turn was during COVID, right? So I was serving on the select board, and it was like, how do we get information out? And that was really a turn to say, how do we connect people with really important information? I forgot how many shows, but we did like one a week back then. And it was like, for me, it was like, oh, this is really cool. And Westborough TV, we know how amazing they are to support this effort. So, and that just sort of carried forward. I was like, okay, how do I make this something where people can get information kind of a little more in a casual setting than, watching a meeting, and maybe touch on some of the fringe things that we go through pretty quickly if you're watching and you're not following every meeting at the select board, but we can go through in a little greater detail. And so I remember Kyle Grendel, our tree warden, coming in and talking about like that initiative. Like, it's just, I don't know why that just popped in my head, maybe because it's spring, but so I'm very proud of kind of what we collaboratively built and all the guests. That said, there's a lot of great things in Westborough. There are a lot of things that we could probably change and improve without poking holes, without, not intended to be critical. What are the areas that maybe you see as opportunities to improve? And maybe in your answer, how might that inform the guests you sort of, or the content you cover?
Do you want to take that first?
Sure. I think as some of the demographics of the town evolve and grow, there's an opportunity for people to be more aware of the different communities and cultures that make up the broader community, and the richness that can bring to our community and our lives. Certainly, families with children in the school, that's like the starting of the melting pot, or the tossed salad, if you will,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Where you meet people that you wouldn't have otherwise met, right? And it starts small in the grade schools and gets bigger because Mill Pond is town-wide, and of course the high school is there, and Gibbons. So, I see there's opportunities there to expand. I also see that we have some challenges, affordability, right?
Yeah,
And
the heart of that.
and it's a huge challenge, because how do you provide the services? How do you provide the type of community you want, and fund those things, and still enable the community to be affordable to those who want to stay here, or want to move here, or want to live here? And challenging things. It's funny. I've always said, look at the downtown is a hot topic of discussion. 6 years on the select board, the most common issue was, how come we can't have a more vibrant downtown? Well, how do you do that? You do that with zoning to encourage business development and new businesses coming in. You look at zoning to get residential, to make it, so it doesn't empty at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. You have to worry about traffic and parking and safety. It always tickled me a little bit that we had a traffic study that said, you need to fix the traffic, and to do that you need to do A, B, and C. And then we had a safety study that said, to make it more safe, don't do A, B, or C. And then a parking study that said, well, you should do B and maybe C and then D and E, but not G, right? And so it's like 3 different studies all trying to solve parts of the same problem with contradictory best practices that have to be balanced. And so, for us, I think there's more that we can do to educate so that people realize the complexity of the issues and that they're complex, but they are solvable. And also realize that there may not be one best solution. It may be compromise, and sometimes it's the least worst. That you have to end up with. But getting there, and so I think for what I'd like to see change is more involvement in the community, more awareness of the complexity of some of the issues that, as a community, we want to solve.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think community engagement and connection are such a big part of what I hope to see more and more and more. And there was like a flow of that even a year ago, and then suddenly no flow. And I think the reason is because as we're more divided as a nation, we seem to become more divided as a town. And unfortunately, where we think of our local politics as nonpartisan, and it is, people who are voting don't necessarily see it that way.
Right.
And so to educate our town when it comes to our local government seems a must, and to get more and more people involved, because it is the next generations, including us as we're heading out, new generations come in. I see the same thing on the Westborough Education Foundation. A new group really needs to come in to take over the reins. And I know how difficult that is with 2 working parents or even single parents working. And it requires some sacrifice. And people don't quite recognize that the sacrifice is worth it because you're giving something to yourself and your community. And it requires stepping up. And I'm hoping that by interviewing a bunch of people here, even in 01581, that will maybe spur on some of this growth, because it is this next step where new people really have to come in and understand the issues, because obviously when we look on social media and you see the limited knowledge and you want to respond and you don't always respond. And when you do respond, you just put yourself right into the wrath
Sometimes silence is better, and sometimes I can't help
Yes.
myself.
And it's sad because people do still think they're going to get their information all from social media, and that is just absurd, because most of the information is coming through most of the board meetings. And how do you disseminate that information in a more succinct way? I mean, people are talking about that on a regular basis. And there's no easy way, because there's no newspaper, and there was a way back in the day, but there isn't now. And we don't have a communications director. And so that's, I just feel like more people have to get involved, and it would be good for this show to bring more people in.
I think, and I think just being able to get the information out and create and I think we were doing that in part on the show before. I had to kind of pause it because of other commitments. I think you guys are going to breathe some new and interesting kind of life into it, and I'm very excited about that, given your experience. I'm also excited because, and I had this conversations many times with our general manager Karen about, like, I'm on the select board, right? So I'm bringing on guests, sometimes they're town guests, and I have to be careful in this seat of, like, am I expressing my opinion in advance of, a topic that might be coming before us, or that came before us and that could come back, or what have you. And so I'm really excited that you guys are sort of not in those seats. You are on the Affordable Housing Trust. So, but I'm excited that you're just 2 residents who really care, who have a ton of experience and diverse experience, to really bring this show to the next level. So I'm excited about that.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. And we do have that kind of banter back and forth about all different topics, and we have differing views. And it does make it exciting, because why would we have the same view? In fact, it was always very confusing to me when Alan was on the select board at the same time I was on school committee. I think we overlapped by 2 or 3 years, maybe 2 years.
Yeah.
It was absurd to think that we would have the same view
Yeah.
on school issues or town issues.
Yeah.
We never had
Yeah.
the same views on either.
Right.
And
We agree on some things.
very limited. And that's good. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what makes a marriage, that's what makes a partnership, that's what makes a community member, is
Yeah.
that you would have this diverse view from one another, and that you would be able to communicate
Yeah.
with one another respectfully. And I do hope
Yeah.
that comes out in the show, because
That's great.
that is what's wrong right now, is
Yeah.
the lack of respectful communication among differing views.
Yeah.
That's really what it's all about. And we even have I have a brother-in-law, Alan's stepbrother, who is running a center at Northwestern University specifically on communication.
Oh, no
for
kidding. Oh,
college
interesting.
kids at Northwestern, really having the dialogue. And he just started the center, and I'm thinking that's what it's really about. Because the only way to unite the nation or unite a community
Yeah.
is to be able to talk to one another. If you just stay in your own bubble,
Yeah.
You'll never-
yeah.
you'll
And we're
never
all
get
guilty of like being in our own bubble because of time and everything else.
Right.
But no, I and you both touched on, I think, 2 really important points. It's about, you mentioned accessibility, making kind of the process, the government feel accessible, and we can do that in so many different ways. Transparency, better communication, easier ways to access information in languages people understand, that is easier than English, which has its own complexities, and that it's also approachable, right? So I think one of the things that I've sort of always strived to do and be in an elected seat is to be approachable, right? I mean, and there's so many times people will say, "Oh, I hate to bother you." I'm like, "You're not bothering." Like, that's a great question. It doesn't matter how small it is. I mean, I remember someone reaching out, and they were frustrated. It's not a town issue per se, but with the pickup time. They lived in an apartment complex in the downtown area, of the dumpsters being emptied. And so when they get emptied, clang, right, really early in the morning. And so it's not a town issue per se, right, because that's a private service. We don't have curbside pickup here as a town. But I was able to kind of say, hey, like, Board of Health, like, could you have a conversation, with in this case it was Harvey's, about like just awareness about like what are your hours of operation in the downtown, right, or anywhere, in any residential area. And for that person it was like, oh right, like, because I don't have to be like woken up at like 5 a.m. to hear a dumpster being like emptied on a Saturday, right? So I mean, it's little things like that, right? It's like, my friend Lydia Goldblatt would always say, it's always about fixing the potholes, Shelby. Like, just make sure the potholes are fixed, right? Well, good. I'm excited.
Yeah.
So as you look forward, thoughts about kind of keeping the cadence of the show? Have you thought about kind of, monthly, bi-monthly? What are your thoughts about that? Weekly?
what are you
every
thinking?
day?
We hadn't thought
We
about
haven't
it.
really discussed it.
Okay, all right,
well,
all right.
my
Stay
thoughts
tuned.
were at least monthly.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
There's certainly enough going on
Yes.
that
Yeah.
it could be more frequent than that. I expect we'll continue to have some folks from the town government on a fairly regular basis, but also look to bring forward and highlight aspects of our community, whether it's government or nonprofits
Yeah.
or even some unique businesses
Yep.
in town that you might not otherwise be aware of, and bring those forth to the community as well.
And there's some really interesting students right now who are really, it isn't just part of the civics program. It's part of the entire fabric of that community that we really could find some really interesting interviews of some students who have really just taken the ball and are
Yeah.
leading in our schools,
Yeah.
and probably will become community leaders
Yeah.
at some point. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunity for, and I also think surrounding the town meetings, I think it's still important for us to come in, perhaps as we did more recently,
Yes,
to
thank you for doing
interview
that.
some of those people who have brought over articles, or even just articles that are very confusing.
Right.
Because then, on social media, when they ask those questions, there'll be a clip where we've asked directly.
Right.
And a big part of that was just we did this recently where we interviewed the police chief and the
Talked about the command center vehicle,
Yep.
right?
yes,
Yep,
the planning.
yep.
What is she? The
Town planner.
town planner.
Yep.
Yeah, that was really necessary because not everyone understood what was about to come forward, and it really
Zoning
just
articles
educates.
are,
Yes.
we can be better at that. That, when you mentioned that,
Yeah, I
like,
mean,
so
so we can definitely,
complicated, yeah.
the challenge with the zoning articles is by law, they have to be written a specific way. So by law, they have to say, on this page in this chart, change S to P,
Yeah,
right? And that's the way it shows up in the warrant.
yeah,
To figure out what it actually means, you have to know what S means and P means and the purpose of the chart and the context of the page it's on and the zoning.
Right,
And
yeah.
so it's hard, even when you have the before and the aftermath
Yeah.
maps,
Yeah.
to understand.
or aftermath.
Or aftermath, to understand what you want. And, what's interesting is historically, even on the town meeting warrants, zoning articles, are towards the end. And on the one hand, I get it, it's not as interesting to many people, but you think about, when you make a zoning change,
The-
it is generational.
Right,
Because you can change the zoning, but it doesn't
Yeah.
matter till someone sells their property or wants to tear down what they have and rebuild something
Right,
new.
right.
Which may not happen for 20 or 30 years
right.
after you change the zoning. And so it's really, what does this mean for the future?
Yeah,
And so it's a very different perspective. But yeah, hopefully we helped.
Those are
with
tough
those zoning
because
articles,
you're looking for
but-
what's been redacted? The original, the entire original.
Yeah.
It's not there.
Yeah.
So,
So here we go,
you're
yeah.
sitting there
Yeah.
saying, "I don't see the redacted."
yeah.
Yes.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I've had the privilege of serving on the select board with you, Alan, and I know if there's anyone that can geek out on government, it's you. And,
That's true.
And I love that about you.
I can agree.
And
That is
Lisa, from afar, I've seen you on school committee and some of the changes you brought forth. I remember you worked tirelessly on the transportation budget, and you were very involved in a lot of the special ed, work, and obviously all the things that school committee does. So I'm very excited. Thank you all for stepping up. And I know you just were dying. I mean, the list was long. I just want you to know of people. So I don't know. I'm thinking they've passed the interview. I don't know. I'm thinking it's a 2 thumbs up. At least
And
it is for me.
Thank you for your service because
Yeah.
you've done an amazing job.
Oh,
81 episodes, and
I love it.
it's so much commitment to serve the town in so many ways, and you are in many pots, and I just think it's a lot, and people don't recognize how much that is, and it's worth it.
Yeah.
And that's the piece that people don't get when they realize that there's so much sacrifice to serve on a board because it takes up your time and it takes up your emotional energy and your
life.
Yes, your
Yeah,
life.
yeah.
It takes a bit of it. But how rewarding and how necessary for a town to run when you have good people in those spots.
Well, I love it. I mean, generally, I'm not allowed to go to the grocery store because the trips take longer because inevitably someone sees me. So I generally stay away from the markets. My family does that. But no, it is. If there weren't other commitments that were pressing on me, whether it's this show or public service, I would do it for a long time. And in some way, I'll always be involved. But it truly is an honor to, and not in an egotistical power way, it's an honor to be in that seat thinking about decisions for the long term of the community, thinking about, if my daughter decides to make Westborough her home in some years ahead, did I leave this place a better, in a better place? So, I think we've all done
Yes.
well by that, and
Yeah.
we have amazing people who serve on so many boards and committees, and again, in small ways. But we can always do better. So,
And I hope it models for younger people. We had no idea if it was even affecting our children until I suddenly saw an interview at Westborough TV with my daughter. I had no idea that she had been impacted by us at all
Yeah.
until watching an interview of her talking about service to communities.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's what it's really about,
Yeah. Yes.
which is
Yeah.
passing this along
Yeah.
and making people recognize how necessary it is. Everyone has intellectual capital that
Yep.
needs to be shared.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, great.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I
Yeah.
think this is like I'm passing the
baton.
torch or something. Or,
Yeah.
yeah. All right.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the 01581. It's not the last one, but it's the last one where you'll see me in this seat. Perhaps when they're on vacation, I don't know, they'll call me in as their backup member here. Thank you. It's been so fun to be the host of this show, and I'm so excited to hand it over to Lisa and Alan. Take care, be well, take care of each other, and do good work.